Alrighty, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Tonight, we're going to be talking about entrepreneurship competitions throughout high school. I'm going to start the conversation off with the first of four sections. I'm going to start by talking about Ingenious Prep, what we do, what value we bring to students and families. Then I'm going to transition into discussing how applications are actually processed at the college admissions office. I believe that highlighting this actual process allows our students and our families to understand sort of the rules of the game, or at least how decisions are made. Then I'm going to transition into talking about the four critical factors of standing out in the college admissions space, particularly focusing on things like academic preparation, diversity, leadership, and then the application persona. And then finally, I'm going to talk about different entrepreneurship competitions, specifically highlighting the Blue Ocean Student Entrepreneurship Competition, and then also the Diamond Challenge. When I get to that section, I'm going to specifically address why students should participate in entrepreneurship competitions and how they will help the students' candidacy as they pursue different colleges, particularly the most selective institutions. At the end of the conversation today, if you have any questions, please do utilize the chat function in Zoom, and I'd be more than happy to answer those. By way of introduction, I'm going to be your host today. My name is Matt Rosenbaum. I'm the Chief of Staff at Ingenious Prep. Personally, I've been in the admissions space for a little over 12 years. For the last several years, I've been working one-to-one with students, helping them prepare for, apply to, and then ultimately enroll in the most selective institutions in the country. But before that, I was an admissions officer at the University of Chicago, where my primary responsibility was to recruit and evaluate students for the undergraduate program. And it's there where I really learned how and why students get into these selective institutions. And a lot of that information that I learned, I'm going to bring to you today. Otherwise, personally, I live in the city of Chicago, and I study philosophy and business. I'd like to invite my colleague, Jamie, to introduce herself. Jamie's going to be your main point of contact for competitions at Ingenious Prep.
Hi everyone, this is Jamie. I'm currently based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm currently the Strategic Partnership Manager at Ingenious Prep. I'll also be helping co-hosting the webinar tonight. I'll be monitoring the questions, so if you have any questions, please feel free to submit it in Q&A. I'm happy to answer them throughout the webinar, or we'll leave it until the end of the webinar to answer them live. Welcome everyone, it's a pleasure meeting you all.
Thanks, Jamie. So a little bit about Ingenious Prep. Very simply, Ingenious Prep is a college counseling organization that works with high-achieving students interested in preparing for and then ultimately enrolling in the most selective institutions in the U.S. We distinguish ourselves on three pillars. The first pillar is we bring our students and our families the best admissions staff, inclusive of former admissions officers, so former decision makers at the colleges our students want to go to. On the screen in front of you, you can see some examples of our colleagues maintaining the former admissions officer role. For example, my colleague Bruno, who is an FAO at Harvard, my colleague Zach at Johns Hopkins, and my colleague Wes at the University of Chicago. Every student works directly with a former admissions officer who helps create and then develop and execute a strategy for the student to go from where they're at to where they want to be. In addition, students work with subject matter experts whom we call graduate coaches. These graduate coaches work alongside the former admissions officers to develop and then also execute the individualized strategy for each student. In front of you, you can see some of my colleagues in the graduate coach role. For example, Shannon with a PhD from Yale, Megan with a bachelor's from Duke and a doctorate from BU, and then Rachel with a master's and then two masters, from Columbia University. In addition, every student also working with us through the candidacy building program is entitled to participate in what we call an academic mentorship, which is a 12-week research project alongside a professor, helping students explore areas of their interest that can ultimately be a focal point on their college application, and also a project that they get published in a high school journal. In front of you, you have some of the examples of the professors that our students work with. At Ingenious Prep, we offer a variety of services, including candidacy building, application counseling, and then also we have academic mentorships, which are the research programs, a leadership and innovation lab, which is an entrepreneurship incubator program helping students create big impact projects. We work with companies to provide internships. We have subject tutoring and test prep. and we also have academic and reflective writing seminars. In addition, we also have competition prep programming. I will talk with you more specifically about our competition prep programming targeted towards the Blue Ocean Student Entrepreneurship Competition, and then also the Diamond Challenge. In addition to our staff, what sets us apart are our resources, particularly our curriculum. We've spent the last 12 years developing a know-how guide by mining information directly from former admissions officers to create a systemic and operational curriculum that's used to train and manage our counseling team, and then also to work with our students so that we can meet students where they are and take them to where they want to go. Our resources, our staff, and our curriculum has been extremely successful. So far this year, we've had 160 Ivy League offers, 280 top 20 offers, and over 550 top 30 offers. We do our own data analytics, and students working with us are 7 times more likely to get into a top 10 school, 8 times more likely to get into an Ivy League school, and 97% of our historical students have gotten into reach or target schools. Now, of course, that's sort of the obligatory introduction to Ingenious Prep. I'm happy to answer more questions about our organization, our services, and our staff at any point in time, either after this conversation or directly on a one-to-one consultation. But I'd like to jump into the meat of our conversation by starting off with the key idea of how applications are processed and how decisions are made. Very simply, I like to start here because if you don't know the rules of the game, how can you expect to win it? Very simply, if you don't know how decisions are made, how can you reverse engineer a pathway to get there? So we're going to start by talking about how applications are actually processed. When a student applies to a university, they utilize something called the Common Application. The Common Application collects the student's grades, students' test scores like the SAT and the ACT, the students' achievements like results and awards and competitions, the students' activities on an activity list, letters of recommendation, essays, and the intended major. When a college admissions officer reviews this, what specifically happens is that the student submits their application electronically online. The college then downloads those applications and then distributes them to what's called a regional admissions officer. That regional admissions officer has a specific geographic region and is responsible for understanding the landscape of opportunities and the landscape of high schools within that region. Specifically, what makes a great student, what makes an okay student, what makes a not so great student. I mentioned earlier that I was an admissions officer at the University of Chicago. My specific regions were Southern California, south of LA, and then also in Westchester County, New York. My specific responsibility was to understand the high schools in those areas, the extracurricular opportunities, the resources, and ultimately which students would be admissible. Now, the reason why I bring up the regional admissions officer is because a lot of people think that the admissions office is reading your application, when in reality, it's one admissions officer who actually travels to your high school, works to a degree with your college counselor at the high school, sometimes goes to college fairs. They're actually the one who's reading your application and directly comparing you to other students at your school and other students in your region. Interestingly, you can find out who this is. So for example, if you were interested in going to Columbia University and you lived in Massachusetts, your admissions officer would be Kath Caraway. Now, the reason why this is important is because it now should frame in your mind that it's your responsibility as a student to stand out to one person. You need to be thinking about your application as an argument for what value you're going to bring to the college you're applying to. You need to be distinctive, you need to stand out, and you need to persuade one person to do what you want, which is ultimately to click admit. You need to remember your application is going to be about 13 pages in a stack of applications that, if printed out, would be as tall as a 20-story building. You're going to be directly compared to other applicants from your region by the same person, and that's directly your competition. And you need to leverage your application to be distinct, persuasive, powerful, and memorable, so that the one admissions officer, in this case, Kath Caraway, who's reading from Massachusetts, does what you want, which is to ultimately admit you. Now, we know that it's your responsibility as a student to stand out And we know it's your responsibility as a student to write persuasive essays, get good grades, and then ultimately make it so that the admissions officer does what you want, which is admit you into your dream college. Now, the question is what choices can you make to stand out? And that's where we get into the idea of the 4 critical factors of standing out. So a lot of families come and ask me, a lot of families come and ask my colleague, Jamie, how do you make a great impression? What do you do to stand out? Well, there are 4 critical factors to standing out: your grades and test scores, leadership, diversity, and a consistent theme or application persona. Now, if you think about it from the admissions officer's perspective, you can think about it as when they look at your application, they're going to ask 2 questions. The first question is, can the student do the work? Are they academically admissible? And this is where they look at grades and thresholds. Now, before I get into this, I do want to do a true or false just to make sure the audience is engaged. True or false, 50% of students with a perfect SAT or ACT scores applying to Brown are rejected. Please use the chat function to put T or F. And for those of you who guessed false, you're true. You're correct. 76% of students with perfect scores applying to Brown are rejected. And that's because when the admissions officer says, can the student do the work? It's really a binary. It's either yes, they are admissible, or it's no, they are not admissible. We call this a threshold. Can the student do the work? Yes. Okay, great. Everything else matters. Can the student do the work? No. Okay, realistically, nothing else matters. And interestingly, you can find out this threshold of what is an admissible student at every college because they report this information. For example, if you look at Princeton with a middle 50% SAT between 1440 and 1570 and an average GPA of 3.9, that's the threshold. University of Chicago publishes 1510 to 1560 and then a 4.3. You can look at this information. If you want more information, you can go to every college's admissions website, look at the last year's class admitted student profile, or if you really want more data, Google common data set and then insert the school. But the reality is that there are 2 questions. The first question is, can the student do the work? If the answer is yes, great, everything else matters. If the answer is no, okay, nothing else matters. And what this dictates is that great GPAs and great test scores only get you halfway. They're not unique. They're not enough to guarantee admission. For reference, when I was working at the University of Chicago, every year we received 36,000 applications. Of those 36,000 applications, 18,000 of those students looked about the same, academically speaking, but only 2,000 students got in. So then the second question is, why should we admit this student? What value is the student going to bring to our campus? And this is where the next 3 factors of standing out come into play: diversity, leadership, and a clear application persona. Now, when I talk about diversity, I don't mean things that you cannot control. I don't mean your race. I don't mean your gender. I don't mean your socioeconomic class. What I mean are the choices that you're making to stand out. What are you doing differently than other students in your class? I'll give you an example. A student of mine who was interested in entrepreneurship said, Matt, I am super interested in entrepreneurship, so I'm going to participate in the Future Business Leaders of America at my high school, and I'm going to join the startup club. Do you think that's enough? My response was, how many other students at your high school interested in entrepreneurship are doing those activities? He said, everybody. My response then was, well, then how will you stand out amongst everybody else? You do so by doing different things. For example, developing a unique and specific academic interest. If you're interested in biology, maybe marine biology. If you're interested in entrepreneurship, maybe social entrepreneurship. Or maybe you're doing something unusual or uncommon. Maybe you're starting a company or a nonprofit. Maybe you have uncommon achievements like a patent holder or an international prize winner. These are the things that we guide our students to do. Doing things that are different than the herd, doing things that are different than all the other students that are applying against them. Because all the other students are going to be doing things that are commonly taught as being successful or good or to stand out. For example, president of the school club, captain of the sports team, valedictorian. The reality is that there are over 150,000 high schools worldwide, which means that there are 150,000 presidents of the school club. These are what I would call foundational activities, not persona building activities that are ultimately going to help you stand out. Now, as we think about standing out, we also need to think about the idea of leadership. A lot of people think that leadership are titles or personal excellence, but the reality is that leadership can always be measured. It's managing people, it's launching organizations, it's growing existing organizations. In front of you, you can actually see a specific example of what college admissions officers see when they see the idea of leadership. In front of you is a snippet directly taken from one of our students' Common App application activity list. You can see in front of you 3 red boxes which quantify the student's impact. They founded a community wellness organization. That community wellness organization connected 75 plus seniors with 50 plus teens, and then ultimately raised $6,000. The number one thing that colleges reward students with is entrepreneurship and self-starting. You want to be able to do things that are different, and you want to be able to measure your impact or your organization's impact. Now, beyond grades and academics, which are a threshold, can the student do the work? Yes. Why should we admit this student? Well, they're doing something different and they're doing something that's measured. We also want to focus on the idea of the application persona. The application persona is the argument that you are making to the college. It is ultimately the overarching umbrella that's going to tie all the pieces of your application together. And it's going to fit in the following sentence. By looking at my application, you should see that I am a what? By looking at my application, you should see that I am a multilingual public health campaigner bringing science and culture together. By looking at my application, you should see that I am a relentless intellectual committed to creating sustainable cities across the US through engineering, architecture, and environmentalism. By looking at my application, you should see that I'm a talented and recognized coder using CS to assist people. Application personas serve 2 purposes. One, they're the clear argument in your application, which means that everything else, your essays, your activities, your letters of recommendation, all are evidence to serve the argument. But if you are not at the application point yet, and you are a younger student, 8th, 9th, 10th, or 11th, exploring your interests and then being able to identify a persona earlier serves as a very clear guiding light for all the decisions you need to make academically, extracurricularly, and intellectually during this process. What summer program should I do? Well, what's your persona? What innovation project should I do? Well, what's your persona? What competition should I do? Well, what's your persona? A persona can be highly specific or it can be interdisciplinary. Highly specific shows one very clear interest. For example, by looking at my application, you should see that I'm a botanist committed to rebuilding the endangered flora of Mongolia. Or it can be interdisciplinary, which combines 2 areas of interest. By looking at my application, you should see that I'm a trendy engineer aiming to apply chemical principles for a more environmentally friendly fashion. Now, you might think that the first one in particular is a little bit wild. It's not. If we look across the areas colleges care about, what you do academically in school, what you do extracurricularly, and what are you intellectually engaged with, somebody who's a botanist committed to rebuilding endangered flora of Mongolia, in school, maximize their biology and environmental science courses. Outside of school, did a research project about endangered species in Mongolia, did an innovation project where they started a greenhouse program at the high school where they fundraised to actually build a greenhouse, and then they created a greenhouse curriculum, did an internship and a volunteer work at a local nursery, and then intellectually they applied to colleges with botany programs and then greenhouses. All of these things tie together to support a memorable argument. Now, in front of you, you can see some examples of personas that worked. This student got into Harvard and Princeton. By looking at my application, you should see that I'm an accomplished poet with an academic passion to examine identity through language and economics. You can see on the right side of your screen specifically where the awards and competitions came in. Poet of the Year, Poetry Prize, Poetry Award. Now, because of course this is focused on business competitions, by looking at my application, you should see that I'm an ed tech entrepreneur hoping to revolutionize the field of special ed through AI and technology. This student got into Cornell and Carnegie Mellon. You can see on the left side, FBLA Nationals. You can also see DECA, first place. You can see that on the right side, the student was the co-founder of a business program and the CEO of a software program for ed tech. Now, I wanted to basically share the landscape of what colleges are looking for now. Okay, what we learned is individual admissions officers are making decisions around who gets in and who doesn't. And that means that it's your students' responsibility to persuade them through a clear application persona that has diverse evidence demonstrating their leadership. Now, the question is where do these entrepreneurship competitions come into play? I want to talk specifically about two entrepreneurship competitions. One is the Blue Ocean Student Entrepreneurship Competition, and one is the Diamond Challenge. Both of these are extremely fun and extremely competitive programs that many of my personal students in the past have participated in. Why should one participate in these programs? Well, as I mentioned earlier, entrepreneurship is the #1 skill set that colleges will reward students with in the application process. And the ability for a student to have real-world experience, the ability of a student to demonstrate innovation, leadership, and communication skills is going to be tremendously rewarded, because if you remember, colleges are inviting students to their campus. They want students who are going to participate in healthy activities on campus, but equally important, they want to graduate productive members of their alumni community. They want students who are going to go through their program and then make great impact in the future. So these types of competitions demonstrate a student's ability to stand out amongst their peers, ideate different solutions, give presentations, and then, of course, leverage teamwork to accomplish a common goal. I am a huge fan of these competitions, and ultimately, I think that any student who's interested in business, entrepreneurship, finance, social innovation, political science should really be thinking about participating in one of these. Now, the first competition is the Blue Ocean Student Entrepreneurship Competition, which is based off of the Blue Ocean Strategy book written by Professors Kim and Professors Maborn. This is a great book. You can download it on audiobook, or you can buy it online, or you can go to a bookstore. The idea is that the Blue Ocean strategy is one without competition and one with phenomenal impact. An example would be like the iPhone, whereas a red ocean has many, many competitors, won't scale like a restaurant. Now, the competition itself is interestingly the largest virtual pitch competition for high school students, and it was founded in 2014 by a high school student himself. All you need to do, read the Blue Ocean book, sign up either as an individual or as a team up till 5, and then submit a 5-minute pitch video. It's free to enter, and submissions are due in mid-February. Now, on the other side, we have the Diamond Challenge, which is hosted by Delaware's Horn Entrepreneurship Center. There are 2 tracks, one's business innovation and one's social innovation. The difference is that the business innovation competition is mostly oriented towards for-profit innovations, whereas social innovation is not-for-profit innovation or solving a social problem. You do need to join with a team of either 2 to 4 students. We will match you with a team if you want to participate in the Diamond Challenge. We will also match you with a team if you're interested in the Blue Ocean Entrepreneurship Competition. There are multiple rounds for the Diamond Challenge. The first round is that you have to submit a 1-minute video, and then you have to submit a concept paper, and then you go advance from regionals all the way to the global summit. Winners of this competition are entitled to several $1,000s worth of prizes. Fundamentally, these are similar competitions, but there are clear differences. Blue Ocean is only one round. It's pitch only. It's all virtual. There's no cost. The Diamond Challenge, there's 3 rounds, which include paper and pitch, and you're required to have a team. The Blue Ocean fundamentally focuses on huge ideas and market disruption innovation, i.e. the term Blue Ocean. And the Diamond Challenge offers, as I mentioned, business and social impact pathways. Both of them are phenomenal ways to spend and develop the idea over the summer. And both are going to enhance leadership, creativity, and strategic thinking. Now, we have a wonderful opportunity where actually one of my colleagues, Maya Gobert, is a judge for the Blue Ocean Student Entrepreneurship Competition. So I'm going to play a video for you, which reviews 3 different things: the scoring criteria and the judging process, general tips and strategies, and what the judges value most. My understanding is that we're having a little bit of difficulty hearing. So give me a second and I'm going to send the link to the chat and we can watch this individually. Hang tight, please. Can anybody hear now? Okay, please hold on 1 second and I will fix this technical difficulty. Please hang tight. I'm sorry, everybody. I have never shared a video before. Jamie, can you share your screen and do that if possible?
Yeah, I think we can also try the setting in screen sharing, but let me do that in the meantime.
Okay. Jamie, are you going to share your screen?
Give me 1 second. I don't think it's working for me.
Okay, everybody, I'm very sorry about this. I thought that we would have been able to play the videos. So we'll send you these videos afterwards, and you can find out number one, criteria from a judge's perspective. So I'll make sure to share that with you, all of our attendees, and then also a sample video from a student who submitted to the Blue Ocean competition. So you can expect these in your email after the presentation. Now, at this point, I'd like to introduce our Ingenious Prep competition coaching program. So our competition coaching program specifically for the Blue Ocean Student Entrepreneurship Competition, and then also the Diamond Challenge, is a 6-week summer program from July to August, which includes 12 coaching sessions during the summer and then 4 team check-ins during the fall. The 4 team check-ins during the fall is to make sure that students and their teams are prepared for either the Blue Ocean competition or the Diamond Challenge. The curriculum covers design thinking, storytelling, and pitch development, and it's mentored by a University of Chicago Booth MBA grad, and students are promised to have a competitive and polished submission. Our instructor is Kieran Howard. Kieran has a bachelor's degree from West Point and an MBA from the University of Chicago, and he's currently a consultant at McKinsey & Company. He was a startup co-founder and a semifinalist in Booth's Venture Challenge, and was a former U.S. Army officer with expertise in innovation and leadership. He's an extremely exciting mentor and one that I know our students will be super excited to work with. If you are a current Ingenious Prep student, please contact your program manager or enrollment counselor. You can also contact us at competitionprep@ingeniusprep.com. Please do schedule your consultation by May 9th, and if so, you'll receive a $200 off the program. I do apologize for not having the videos prepared. That's a technical difficulty and one that we will make sure to fix next time. But I will also make sure to send those videos to every one of our participants via email. Please do utilize the chat function to ask any questions you have about college admissions, the Blue Ocean Student Competition. Otherwise, if you would like to schedule a consultation, you can click on the button in front of you to schedule a free consultation. So thank you very much for your time, and please do utilize the chat function, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. The first question is, do you have this program in the school year? We will be running it in the fall. However, I would encourage students to participate in this during the summer because that's when most students are available, and we want to make sure that we're pairing students with their best possible teammates. The next question was, can you please go back to the screen with the logistical information or the program, particularly with respect to the meeting times? The meeting times are going to be at 7 p.m. Eastern time, and those are going to be dependent on the days are going to be dependent on the students who sign up and then the mentor's availability. But we want to make sure that we are covering availability for students on the West Coast, East Coast, and then also in other time zones. So 7 p.m. typically works for our students. If you do have any sort of particular time needs, we're more than happy to try to accommodate those. Another question is, when should students come up with their own application persona? So typically, if we're thinking about the broadest range of candidacy building, interest exploration and participation should be in grade 9. The development of the application persona should be grade 10. And then grades 10, 11, and 12 should be the development of key evidence inclusive of academics, academic mentorship, innovation, lab project, competitions to support the persona. So the students who are developing personas in the sort of 10th grade, plus or minus a little bit, are typically the ones who have the most well thought out ones.